Welcome to Simplify to Scale, a show dedicated to helping you scale a high impact and high profit business that you love without all of the complexity and chaos that can keep you trapped in the day-to-day. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and with decades of scaling experience, I know what actually works and what's just hype. So if you are done with all of the one-size-fits-all scaling advice and all of the overnight success promises, and instead you want proven practical strategies that will help you simplify operations, elevate your leadership, amplify profits, and scale sustainably, let's dive in and get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Simplify to Scale. Today, we're going to do things a little bit differently because over the last several episodes, I've been going pretty deep on a lot of strategy. I've been sharing with you what's changing, what's different, how to rethink your operations, how to rethink your team, how to rethink and restructure your offers. I've really been helping you set yourself up for success and scale in the new year, starting right now. We've talked about what to look at in Q4. We've talked about what to do from a planning perspective. We've talked about what to do from setting your vision perspective. So if you go back and listen to the most recent episodes, if you've missed any, you really have the entire roadmap for everything that you need for success and scale as you move into the new year. And honestly, as you just move forward in your business in general. But there is a piece of this that is really important that I wanted to touch on in today's episode. And this is much more mindset related. So you can have all the best strategies on earth. You can have all the best tools on earth. You can have the best people around you. You can have so many of the right things, but if your mindset is not where you need it to be, if you're not willing to grow as a leader, if you're not willing to evolve as a leader, then some of those things are going to not produce the results that you expect them to by no fault of their own, but sometimes you're just simply not ready for it. Sometimes you can't receive it. Sometimes you can't experience it. Or sometimes it just does not work out the way that you want because it just isn't aligned yet for you. So I want to talk about this through the lens of rebirth. And in a place where so many people are transforming, there's a lot of big transformation that's going on. If you're into anything astrological, this is very much a place of like death and rebirth, letting go of what's not working, stepping into the new era. There's a lot of that that's happening. Seeing that in most businesses, most people are letting go of certain things and stepping into new things. Some of it was forced by market changes. Other, it's just simply more alignment, feeling called to do something that feels much more aligned with where you want to go versus kind of carrying forward a lot of things that you used to do, just kind of because it was always done that way. Sometimes you've grown past it, or sometimes it's just ready for a change, right? But a lot of businesses are in this period of reinvention and rebirth. And we've talked about this quite a bit on the show. But the one thing that's really struck me as I'm in this place of rebirth myself, but more personally, as I've shared, my business itself is really stable. There's a lot of really great things going on in the business, but in my personal life, very much a year of death and rebirth, literal, right? My dad passed in May. That was a huge, huge transition in my life, something I'm still wrapping my head around. My marriage is ending. I'm moving out of the home that I've been in for 20 years. I'm moving out of the state that I've lived in my entire life. There's all of these different really big transformational moments. And as much as they're challenging in the moment, as much as change of any kind can be really disruptive and can be really hard, I also see the beauty in this. I see the opportunity in this. I see the unique thing that I literally have a blank slate and I could go almost anywhere and do almost anything. I have very little that's keeping me stuck or anchored to something. And while that can feel a little scary and overwhelming on one hand, it's incredibly beautiful and freeing on the other. But as I've been doing so much journaling, as I've been doing so much reflecting, what I've realized is oftentimes in business, we want the transformation. We want the big change. We want the identity evolution. We want to move from the person who makes multi-six figures to the person who makes seven. From the person who makes seven to multi-seven to eight, the person who is involved in every single decision and every single thing. We crave that freedom, but it takes an identity evolution to become the kind of person who can experience that freedom and trust in others to do what needs to be done so you don't have to actually do those things. There's all these different identity evolutions that need to happen in us as the leaders of the business, or as whatever role we're wearing, whatever hat we're wearing. in either our business or our life. And so we look forward to the new thing. We look forward to stepping into what's new. And with the new year, there's a lot of that new energy, that transformation energy, that reimagine, reinvent, rebirth energy. All of it's great. But what most people don't realize and what most people aren't usually ready for, and this is where the mindset can get in the way, this is where the thing that you say you want so badly, you actually can keep yourself from, is that rebirth does not come without death first. And I don't mean that literally. Yes, sometimes, kind of like the case in this year for me personally, right? There is literal death. But more often than not, it's the death of the old identity. It's the death of the old offer, the old program, the old way of working, the old way of leading, the old way of being, the old way of thinking, the old way of doing something. One thing must end and must die for a new thing to be born and to begin. And I think we often sugarcoat that. We often overlook that. It feels too harsh. It feels too final. It feels too big. So we ignore it. We ignore the death piece of it. But here's what I've learned after having built, grown, and scaled 8 businesses over the years. Here is what I've learned in having reinvented myself many times over the years. You can move forward and you can make change. You can step into the transformation. You can step into the reimagined state. You can step into the rebirth. And you could avoid the death. You could avoid the closure. You could avoid the end. And when you do it, you will never feel complete. When you do it, there's like an open tab that is stuck open and it keeps pulling you backwards. It's like you're trying to push the accelerator to move forward, but you keep tapping the brake and you don't even realize you're doing it and then wondering why you're not getting somewhere as quickly as you want or at all. And so often we avoid the uncomfortable. We avoid the painful pieces. We don't want the finality of something being over. We don't want to say, you know what, I'm closing doors to this forever. We don't want the end. And so we keep it open so that maybe we could go back to it one day. Maybe if you're feeling kind of inspired, or if just the right conditions are in place, or if this other thing changes over here, you can go back and you can revisit. And it sounds good in theory. It sounds like you're keeping options open, but what it really does, it keeps you anchored in the past. You're not allowing something to fully come to an end so that you can fully step into the next version of you, the next version of your business, the next version of your success, the next version of your scale. It is the giant anchor that keeps holding you down even when you're not consciously thinking about it. And again, I have learned this the hard way because I am terrible at saying goodbye. I hate goodbyes. I'm terrible at endings. I keep all those tabs open. I keep all those possibilities open. I keep all those what ifs, maybe some days open. And I realized just how much that's actually held me back and slowed me down as I'm making some major identity evolutions in really big ways. I'm realizing just how critical it is, how important it is, how supportive it is for where I'm going next, to allow the old thing to die, to allow the old thing to fully complete. Even when that thing is good, even when that thing is beautiful, even when that thing might have served you so incredibly well, it still needs to have an actual completion in order for something else to have the most expansive start, to be filled with the most possibility, in order to truly allow yourself to step into a next level and a next identity. There were so many businesses over the years when I think about the amount of money that I've left on the table by not selling a particular business or doing something because I either waited too long and just closed it down because it kind of fizzled out on its own because my focus shifted, or because I clung on to it because someday when I had more time or when I had a bigger team or when I had XYZ in place, I was going to go back to it and I was going to revisit it instead of just accepting that that chapter was closed, that that relationship, that program, that experience, that piece of me served its purpose really well because it got me to this place where I could imagine what's next. I could step into what's next. Instead of acknowledging that, appreciating that, and letting it come to a close, I just stepped into the new thing without ever closing the tab. And one of my themes for this year was closing the tabs. And boy, did I not fully realize at the time that I set that theme exactly what I was signing myself up for. but I'm realizing just how much I really do truly need to close tabs in many more ways than working on too many things at once and needing to expand my team and all of those typical ways that we look at closing tabs, right? Staying more focused, all of the good stuff. I'm thinking about this energetically. I'm thinking about this at a really macro level, like what needs to die so that something else can be born, and not in a bad way, not in a burn it to the ground and start over because you're so angry or so unhappy or so whatever way. I mean this in the most loving way possible, in the sense that something really truly does need to come to an end. Something has completed its role in your life or in your business. And in order for the next best expression of you, of your success, of your scale, you need to say goodbye to it fully in order to step into something new. And again, we avoid this because of the finality of it. We avoid this because of the heaviness of it. But to truly transform, to truly reinvent, to truly reimagine, you have to give yourself the ability to step forward without the past anchoring you and pulling you down. So here's a few things to think about. First of all, did anything I say in this episode trigger you? Because it might have. It might have, especially if you find yourself holding on to things. If you're someone who's reluctant and hesitant to let something fully go. If you worry a lot about disappointing people, about what people might think if you stop doing something, or if you're no longer the person that you were at one point in time, the idea of it can be very triggering. And then I think it would be really helpful to pull out your journal or to put yourself in whatever sort of space where you feel the most open, where you feel the most introspective and insightful, and take some time and reflect on, where are you hanging on to something that you know you need to let go of? Where is it time to let something come fully, completely to an end? Where are you ready for your next identity evolution? And you know, deep down, you know that you're not going to fully be able to embrace it and step into it without closing the door to something else. So interesting, as you try to hit six figures in your business, you hustle your butt off, you work super hard, and you're willing to say yes to everything, and you're willing to do all the things, and you're just trying to make it. And then you get there, and on your path to seven figures, you start to get a little bit more strategic, but you're still typically working entirely too hard. And then you're stretching yourself in all these different ways by realizing you can't get there without the right systems and the right team. And again, what you hear me talk about a lot with the SPSTI, the strategy, planning, systems, team, and insight, right? You can't get there without those things. And then eventually you start to realize that to get to multi seven figures, to get to eight figure, to take your business towards that big, beautiful vision that you have, it becomes as much, if not more, about work on yourself, about the inner work, about mindset work, about challenging your own beliefs, about challenging your own thinking, about releasing and letting go and leaning out, not just the things in the business, not just the waste in the business, but the things that don't serve you internally, the beliefs that don't serve you, the habits that don't serve you, the communities that don't serve you, the people that don't serve you, the relationships that don't serve you. It becomes so much more working on you, yourself, internally, the further into business you get. It's helpful if you can do that stuff from day one. Don't get me wrong. It's absolutely helpful. And it can help with huge leaps forward in your business when you do. But by the time you get into seven figures and you're continuing to try to scale the business, you hit a point where you literally cannot go any further without those things. And so if that's you, if you feel like you've done all the strategies, you've done all the tactics, you've done all the things, you've put all the things in place, and yet you still keep bumping up against things, you still feel this heaviness, especially if maybe you've gotten yourself out of the day to day, but you still feel unsettled. You still feel heavy. You still feel unfulfilled. A lot of times it's that mindset work, that inner growth, that inner development that's necessary, both as the leader of your business for your business and for yourself in your own personal fulfillment and rich, fulfilled life. There's one final thing I will share with you, and that is sometimes things evolve in such a way that we do want to revisit something that we've previously closed the door to. And here's the thing. When that happens, what's really interesting is if you did not keep the tab open, if you allowed yourself to fully let it complete, If you allowed yourself to fully step into that next version of yourself or your business, when you do revisit it, you are revisiting it from a completely different place. You're revisiting it from that more elevated place, that more elevated energy. You have that more elevated vantage point. And so sometimes you can take something that once was and you can reshape it and you can reimagine it and you could turn it into something entirely beautiful. But the thing is, we're frequently scared to let go of something fully just in case that happens. And more often than not, it doesn't. But what we do in the process is slow ourselves down and hold ourselves back. Whereas if we just let it close, if we appreciate that it has done its job, it is complete, and we move on, and at some point we feel inspired to go back to that idea, that relationship, that program, that business even. We can give ourselves the freedom and the flexibility to do that when and if the time is right. But know this, you are going to approach it in such a different way, in such a more successful way, if you allowed it to fully close and you revisit from that new vantage point, versus if you held on to it and kept the tab open and you still have a piece of your old identity tied to it. You're much more likely to repeat the things in the past that did not work for you, that dragged you down, that made you feel unfulfilled, or that held you back. So it ends up being very different energy. So don't feel like you can't close something because someday you may want to revisit. Allow yourself to close it and don't even worry about it. If someday you feel called to revisit, then and only then do you step back into the pieces of it that align with where you are now and with where you're going without getting stuck in the pieces that don't fit. And so as you look forward to next year, as you look forward to the next 5 or 10 or 50 years, what needs to die in its current state for something new to be born? What do you need to close to step into something new, truly step into it without holding yourself back and continuously hitting that brake? I'm going to guess there's probably something right now in your business or your life that you're doing that with, because almost all of us have it. So with this being November, with this being the time to look at all the things you're going to say no to, all the things you're going to lean out, all the things you're going to do to create the space for what you want next year, also be thinking about it through the lens of what we talked about in this episode. I hope you liked this short diversion from what we normally talk about to a little bit of mindset work, a little bit of insight into what's been going on in my own brain and in my own journal lately. And with that, I will see you again next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Simplify to Scale. If you'd like to take things further, I invite you to join me for my Scale Smarter, Not Harder interactive workshop. Head to strategicopsinstitute.com/scale smarter to get registered. Not only will we dive into what might be keeping you trapped in the day-to-day, but you'll have the opportunity to ask me your questions live. If you got value out of today's episode, I'd love if you'd take a moment and rate and review the show so more businesses can learn to scale more simply and sustainably. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and I'll see you again next week.